Totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Oh, we're back. Okay, the value proposition.
Yeah, cool. What
I
about
mean, that's
it?
a pretty encompassing
It's a big
thing.
topic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The idea that, well, again, when I say idea, it's because that's been my experience in life. But
Okay.
the idea that there is an idea talking
Mhm.
about becoming valuable to an organization you join, whether it's a company, whether it's a social group,
Mhm.
whether it's a club, a professional organization, maybe just a group of friends who meets regularly. The idea of being contributing, but being valuable, and especially on the vocation side,
Mhm.
understanding that the idea for a long-lasting career, whether it's one firm or multiple firms, as you grow it, the idea of becoming more valuable to your employer
Mhm.
will yield better results. The
Sure.
idea that we get paid by people,
Yeah.
organizations, for the value we bring.
Yeah, right.
Conversely, not the time we put in.
Correct. Yes.
Where is that today?
I don't fucking know. I mean, I believe in, because we deal with many different businesses across all industries. So I think the value proposition is all over the board. I think some people still get it and understand that to charge a client more, to make more money, to be more successful, to rise in the ranks in a profession, you have to bring more value than what you're paid, and then you'll get paid more. Other people, I think, and again, it's not even a generational thing. I think it's just across the board in various parts of it. Other people just think they should just get paid because they're there, get paid to exist. Like
Putting in time.
Like, I'm just doing the work for the client. They should just pay me. Well, no, the client wants exceptional work. Like, you pay for value. And I think, I don't know where it got lost, because I mean, I remember always being taught that as a kid. Like, it's not about the effort and time. It's not about the time you put in. It's about the effort and the outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember working, when I was in high school and college, and I had a job where it was literally just putting in time. I worked in my dad's pipe factory, like counting inventory, which was the fucking stupidest job. I hated it. I literally walked around a pipe yard and wrote numbers on a piece of paper. And I knew I got paid for 8 hours. I milked that motherfucker for 8 hours. But that was a good lesson to me, because I'm like, I don't want this. Like, it made me see that side of things.
Certainly.
It's like,
certainly,
everybody was coming in, just doing I was there from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. And no matter how much I worked, whether I crushed it or not, my pay was going to be the same. So I'm like, it's a summer job. I'm going to do just enough to make sure I'm not fucking up. That's kind of, but then I took a step back and said, that's not who I am. Like, after that summer was over, I'm like, I'm not a lazy person. Like, that was it ate at me all summer, because I hated it. And I think I hated it because I knew I wasn't bringing any value. And I knew there was nothing that I was giving to the company. I was just giving them my time and my body, basically, to just write down numbers. When I got into other jobs, like, that's why I liked working in a restaurant. Like, I loved that, because I knew if I brought a ton of value to those customers at that table, I made a shit ton more money. And that taught me that going from working in a pipe yard where I got paid $7 an hour for literally an 8-hour day, whether I fucking took the inventory of one pipe or 1,000 pipes, pay was the same. Restaurant, I got paid nothing hourly. I made my money by bringing the best value to those tables. And that's when I knew, like, it's all about the value I brought. Because I was all like, my cousin worked at the restaurant, or he was a bartender where I worked, and he crushed it in tips because people liked him. He was a good dude. Like, everybody liked his personality. I'm like, I'm just going to watch him. And I just talk to people, engage with people. And I would leave on a Saturday afternoon with like $300 in tips on a Saturday afternoon in Newcastle. So I was doing something right. It was about the value I was bringing. I made their experience better. I would watch the table. Do they need drinks faster or slower? Are they talking? Are they bored? Like, I would watch those things. And how do I bring value? And I think that, I don't know if it's being taught now. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, there's a school of thought that everybody should work in a restaurant environment at least once in their life.
Yes. Yes.
Because of the demands that are on there and the lessons taught there.
Yeah, just watching people. Like, I loved it because I got to experience every type of person in every type of mood. in a 4-hour shift. I mean, truly, you got happy people, pissed off people, sad people, people that are in the middle of an argument, people that didn't want to be there, people that were just were hungry and that's all they cared about. And then other people that were there for a good experience. So I had to watch and understand people from all these different angles. And how do I treat them? How do I navigate these people? Like, does this person, if they're in a bad mood, do they really want me over at the table? Or do they want me just left alone? I got to make sure their drink's never empty and they have their food quickly. They probably don't want me to engage with them. Other people that are talking and chatty, I come over and talk and they're chatting back. Okay, I could spend more time there. But those were the things I would watch and observe. And I think it's helped me throughout my career just get better at sales because I started, in college.
Yeah, the idea of bringing service and then being paid accordingly based on the type of service you bring is incredibly valuable to a younger person to experience that.
Yes.
Not everybody gets that opportunity, but
no, and they should find it. They should go out and seek that opportunity, because I really believe that working in restaurants, if I had to pick one job, like growing up outside of being a lawyer, that impacted me in the most positive way, it would be being a server.
Yeah, I believe it. I
mean, truly, because just you're in the human element. Think about when you go to a restaurant, right? You can have an amazing experience and you can have the worst experience all at the same place on a different day. So it's like you're seeing everybody at their best to their worst and everything in between. And it's your job as the person bringing them the food, bringing them the shit they came there to pay for, to calm their hunger. Like, you've got to navigate that.
Right.
And do it perfectly or you're not getting a tip. Because, I think my hourly rate was like $2 and some cents back when I worked in restaurants. So it's like, okay, that wasn't going to pay shit. I had to get tips. How do I get tips? By giving them such good service and at such a high value that they would feel terrible not tipping me.
Right.
And I just think that, I don't know if that mentality is still here.
I would think it's probably certainly alive and well. I just don't know if it's being taught. There's a school of thought that depending on how a child is raised, they may be instilled with that kind of service mentality by their parents.
Yeah,
when they're young. They might be kind of like nudged into taking their first job at a local restaurant, at a, heaven forbid, a bar, or somewhere where there's food being served, something where the quality of their presentation in conjunction with the product will yield different amounts of money that they bring home. I think that's healthy. I think that's as opposed to working at like a big box store and getting their whatever they make now, $6.50, $8 an hour.
They make like $20 an hour.
Whatever it is.
It's crazy.
Yeah, well, whatever it is. But it's that, so let's dance around this delicate subject here. So
okay.
Well, you'll see in a second where I'm headed with this. So
I like to dance.
Oftentimes people will basically say there's two pigeonholes. There's a union philosophy, non-union philosophy. I think that's not really a sophisticated way of looking at it. I don't think so either. No, I think there's so many minutiae in between all of that.
Unions are very important. There's a very
1,000%.
They're a very important piece of unions do.
I think there's elements of a philosophy with some union environments where you are being paid to put in time. Doesn't mean it's not productive time. Doesn't mean that the job you're doing is not important. I'm not saying any of that, but the idea that you're being paid a negotiated rate and increments based upon how long you are there.
Okay.
That is much different than working at a vocation where you will be paid based upon your efforts or the creativity you may bring along with this effort. The idea of becoming more valuable to the owner of the location.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's different. It's not
100%.
a bad thing.
No, 100%.
But it's hard to have this conversation because you have people jumping immediately on one fence or the other. And that really isn't the equation. It's just a different philosophy.
Yeah, I think one philosophy is demanding more pay for pay's sake, and the other one is earning more pay for earning's sake.
I would say, generally speaking, that's spot on.
That's kind of how I look at it, because union or non doesn't matter. I think some people just demand more pay because they think they deserve more pay. Other people earn more pay because they've earned it, and that's in both sides of the house. And I think people need to understand that, business. I deal with business owners. I'm a business owner. You're a business owner, right? I will always pay for value. Always. Like I say that about things I buy, right? I will pay a contractor a higher price for something that I know is less expensive to do from someone else because the value that contractor brings.
Absolutely.
Like I will always do that. Like I will pay more to get my car washed at a better place, even though it's water and soap, because the value they bring, the service they do. Like I use Mr. Magic. I have a monthly membership. Here's why, right? It's, I don't know what, maybe like $50 a month, but it takes me, I timed it the other day going to the gym. It took me less than one song to go through the drive-through and have my car completely cleaned. Yeah. Like that's less than 3 minutes. Yep. So that saves me, even if I go somewhere else and it takes me 10 minutes, that saved me 7 minutes over time over, if I go every week, that's a half hour. My hourly rate, I made money. Like that's how I look at it. Like it gives me a higher value. So I look at the world that way. Certainly. And I think that is lost on some people. I think some people, and again, it comes down to what their value system is, right? Like some people don't care about making a ton of money. They don't care about, working like a crazy person to get to that level. They may want to be exactly where they are, and that's okay. But then understand what comes with that. Yeah. Right. Like that's any limitations that are there. Understand. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, because again, like there are people out there I know that love their 9 to 5. They make good money. They're happy. They don't care about achieving anything bigger. They're like, hey, if I get a raise, cool. If the company's not doing well and I don't, okay. They're happy with their, 3% cost of living adjustment. They're good. That's awesome. Like that's you. Everybody's different. I think the people that see value, I think, are the people that are always going to chase success, because they see if they bring more value, they'll always earn more money. Yeah. But you bring the value first before you earn the money. That's the key. That's the lesson, I think, that needs to be explained to the young. It isn't, you're not based upon potential. I mean, there are probably moments in this world where people are paid on their potential. Sure. Sometimes extraordinary amounts of money in sports and so forth. Yeah. But in reality, when you're just starting out, in most circumstances, you bring the value first, the compensation will follow. Yeah. But even think about sports, right? You pay somebody a stupid amount of money because of their potential value and they shit the bed first year. They don't make that money anymore. It's true. You know what I mean? So it's not like, you may come out of the gates with like a potential rock star and you negotiate your way into a heavy compensation package. That means the expectations are even higher. Right. Because now you've got the money before you brought the value. And if you don't bring the value that it not meets that, exceeds it, that money will be pulled away. I can guarantee it. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's interesting though, that there is a philosophy, and it's not new. It's been around since I was a young person. Depending on, who you speak to, there are people that really believe that they are entitled to more money the longer they work at a particular organization. And they're not really looking at what value they're bringing, the skill sets they've learned on the job. They don't even care about that. They think it's because I've been here longer than that person. Yeah, I should be making more than them, or I should have this position in the company because I've been here so long. It's more about the time put in. Yeah, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. There's a component. So I think time does have a component in the equation, right? Because it can and it should, because there's a certain level of experience and wisdom that just come with time, right? If you're in a position, we'll just take we'll just use a baseline middle manager position. Okay. If you're in that position for 10 years, you have 10 years of knowledge of situations you have seen that someone coming out of the gates in that position does not have. Right. So there's a level of expertise you have. Now, the question is, along the way, did you also bring more value? Not just the expertise you've gained by just existing in that position, but did you add value by changing the position, making it better, making it more efficient? Because if you didn't, the time doesn't matter. If you did and you have the time and experience, that's where you see the exponential value go up. Right. That's where I think time plays a factor, because if I'm bringing a ton of value, like, take lawyers, for instance. Like, I'll use my profession. If you're in a big firm and you're, and you're they say like in big firms, what, like partners, maybe you got to be there 7 years to at least be considered for that. But that doesn't mean you're going to get it at 7 years. It may take you 15 years because you didn't bring time.
You may never get it.
But if you're there 7 years, so you have the experience in their mind and you crushed it, and I guarantee at the beginning of year 7, you're going to be put up for partner and get it because they see the value you brought on the way up. Billing hours, bringing in clients, like doing good work, like customer service, like all those components go into it. And that's when the time is the bar, but then the time exponentially increases the value you brought and the compensation will get about down the road, I think.
Yes. So what can we do with our younger folks coming out of high school, going into college, coming out of college, to try to instill more the idea that value should be at the forefront? Because I see,
gotta teach them.
I sometimes see it, and oftentimes I don't.
I think we as parents have to be the example. We have to show them, tell them, instill it in them. Like I told Gabe, right? He's starting at the firm in a couple weeks. He's taking the gap year in law school. And I told him point blank, I said, this is a big boy job. This is not you work for your dad's summer internship. I said, you are the lowest paid employee in the firm. I expect the most from you. And it's like, you show me the value you can bring. Like, it's not I'm going to work at the level I'm paid. Work like you make $1 million, and eventually you will. Right. Like, if you do that, and that's what I'm trying. Like, he's 22 years old. So he's taken this year in between college and law school. I'm trying to set him up for success by letting him know you are low man on the totem pole, right? But I'm going to expect so much more from you than everybody else because you're my son. And I'm trying to set you up for success. So if you come into a position like this one and you bring $1 million work ethic, eventually you're going to make $1 million. I'm not going to pay $1 million. I can tell you that. But eventually you're going to make that game. You're going to make $1 million because you have what it takes, and you're showing people where people get caught up. And I always go back to the cliched saying, success comes by doing things in the dark when no one's watching. Like, that's really what it's like. You can do all the shit when everybody's watching, and you look like, oh, he's this person, all this shit. But it's when no one's watching. That's when it matters most. Because that's when it's hard, right? There's no accolades. There's no one saying good job. There's no one seeing what you're doing, right? But if you consistently do the things in the dark, you will come out of the darkness way ahead of anybody else. And that is a lost concept.
Yeah, it's not as glitzy.
It's not
a look at me moment.
No, it's fucking literally, it's the worst. Like, I spent all weekend just like thinking and doing and just trying to plan for things, and no one's watching.
Well, homework and planning and things like that they're just not sexy. They're just not. But we really like sexy in today's society.
Yeah,
we crave it.
You know how sexy it was? I was sitting on my fucking back deck with my shirt off, sweating in a baseball cap, trying to write policies and procedures on a laptop on Saturday. Like, that's how sexy it was. Like, I was literally just sitting on a Saturday afternoon where I should be relaxing. That's the hard shit you have to do.
Right, of course.
Like, and that, you're right. It's not sexy. It's not sexy at all, but it's required. If you want to get to a certain level in any profession, in life, in business, that is the requirement, to do the hard shit. To do the hard shit when no one knows you're doing the hard shit. That is the variable that most people miss. They'll do the hard shit when they know someone's there seeing me do the hard shit. Like, look at me, I did some hard shit. Cool. Do the hard shit anyways when no one knows, because that's what leads to the discipline, the grittiness, the ability to now navigate through life and be way more successful by building those muscles.
Let's talk a little bit about the importance for employees, especially when they're younger and starting their career, to understand which side of the business equation their particular position within the company falls on.
Okay.
They're either on the revenue generating side of the business, or they're on the expense side. There's no negative here. There's no right or wrong. Just, I'm saying, as a matter of fact, because I believe, honestly, it's important for people to understand which side they're on. The reason being is, if you're on the revenue side, the sales side, you're actually directly bringing in new revenue. It's a little more quantifiable, a little easier to quantify your value based upon what you're doing. And that's only a small portion of the employees generally. The bulk of the employees are on the expense side. And at times your value may not be as easily quantifiable to you.
Right.
Or you may have a skewed opinion of what that value is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I remember, but I think I want to spin this a little bit differently, because I think there's a different way. I think there's a bigger piece at play here. I think a lot of times employees don't understand how they value themselves.
Okay.
And I think you got to understand how you value yourself first to know what value you can bring to an organization, whether it's on the profit side or the expense side, right? Okay. You got to know. And then I think where again, I see, and I've talked to my clients about this and friends of mine that have businesses, like employees don't ask the employer, what do I need to do? Like, again, there's this mentality where employees tend to think the employer is just going to tell me all the things I need to do to be successful. That's not how it works. Like, every person's different, right? Not everybody's motivated by money. Not everybody's motivated by comfort. So the employee in an organization has to understand, one, what's valuable, what they believe their value is to the organization. What they value, is it recognition? Is it compensation? Is it whatever the case may be? Look at those two things, then go to the employer and say, how do I bring value to you? Here's how I believe I'm valuable. Here's what I value. Is this in alignment with you are expecting of me? If they're not willing to ask that question, they haven't done the work to figure out what they value about themselves and what they actually value in life. Those are the first two hurdles they have to get through to even understand the profit expense equation. Because if you're not looking at that stuff, you don't even have any concept what this is yet. Because think about how many people come out of college, right? They don't know what their value is. They're just trying to learn the world, and that's okay, right?
But by your first review, I would think at an organization, you ought to start you should start forming the answers to those questions. And start asking for the answer of how you can be more valuable. Am I meeting expectation?
Exactly. And what are the expectations of me? And because, again, I think employers do a bad job of not always clearly identifying expectations? Absolutely. I've done a horrible job of that. I'm sure of it. But I think it's also on the employees to understand what is expected of them and to ask the questions, especially if they want to be more successful and make more money. Because here's how I look at it. And I remember in corporate America thinking this when I was there. It's like the employees that weren't willing to ask the questions were kind of good flying under the radar. So they were there. They made good money. They weren't ever getting big bonuses or raises, but they were okay. They weren't pushing anybody's buttons. They weren't rocking the apple cart. They were coming in, doing their job, right? The people that wanted to make more money were always the ones asking questions. I remember always seeing those people with their manager. What can I do differently? What can I do better? How can I do more? What value can I bring? And those are the people that went from the account managers, of course, to the AVPs, to the VPs, to the senior VPs, to the C-level suite, because they were asking questions along the way. How am I bringing more value to you, and what can I keep doing, or what can I do differently?
Right. Asking
the questions constantly, because the employer is not going to always lay it out. Whether it's right or wrong, that's to be decided. An employee, it's always within an employee's control. If you want to be more successful, ask how that can happen.
Yeah. Early on for me, I just remember looking at it as a puzzle. The company I was working for, and I was very low man on the totem pole and not degreed, working with degreed people. And but I knew, though, that customers became very happy when I was very nice to them. I was in a customer service role and a client retention role. And that simple thing, I may not have all the technical background that some of these degreed people had, but I was able to be humble enough to realize that, hey, just being nice to these people is a level of service that most won't give.
Yeah,
really.
You're right.
And just doing that and then having a little bit of a skill set to solve some problems, that's a dangerous combination. Yeah. And it worked.
Yeah. I mean,
it wasn't really that hard.
No, not hard for you, but I think it is hard for some. If people didn't grow up in an environment, because think about how different the world is right now, right? if they didn't grow up in an environment that required them to talk to people face to face on an ongoing basis, have they built the skill set to do it now? It's a question. It's something you got to develop over time, right?
It's a good question.
Yeah,
that's a real good question. Yeah, and I'm not sure, based upon how many people in society seem to avoid physical conversations.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's crazy.
I don't know. In
I know you're
what
right.
That even looks like, you know.
Yeah,
I don't even. Again, for someone like myself, the age bracket that I'm in, it's a little disheartening to see the avoidance.
Yeah, it's unfortunate when you see people that want to avoid having the conversations or avoid sending the email or avoid, like, just face it head on. It's never as bad as you think it's going to be. Like, I think we all create these, and I've done it myself. You create these things in your head, like, oh, this is going to blow up. This is going to be terrible. It's going to be super uncomfortable. And so you prevent yourself from doing something, from having the conversation. Like, think about when you're younger and you're dating. Like, you'd see a decent looking, you know, female across the bar. And I'm like, oh, every terrible scenario came into my head, right? If I go talk to her, like, what if she says I'm an idiot? What ifs? Like, what if she's a boyfriend? What if this? It's like, just go talk. I will never know the answer until I engage in the action. But I can remember in my 20s, like, oh, like, what if she doesn't like me? I remember when I asked Laura out, like, I gave her some bullshit story about I got Nutcracker tickets. I'm like, what if? Because we were.
Did you actually have the Nutcracker tickets?
Yeah, that's so the whole. And it's funny how the Nutcrackers became part of our life. But like when we had met, I remember we were all hanging out, and we weren't dating. We were just all hanging out as a group of friends, and she had said she'd never been to the Nutcracker. So I remember that. I said, and you know, my friend kind of liked her too, and I was like, I said, okay, you can try, but then he wasn't doing anything. So I'm like, it's over. Like you lost your chance. So I called her one day. I said, hey, some guy at work had 2 extra tickets to the Nutcracker, gave them to me. Would you want to go? Total bullshit. Like, I bought the tickets, like praying that she said yes. But before I made that phone call, I had every thought in my head. Like, she's gonna say no, you know, she's gonna do this, she's gonna do this. And it's just like, then I just said, just ask the fucking question, dude. And then here we are, married years later.
Yeah.
But had I let that fear prevent me from asking the question, that's what I think a lot of people do. Even that's what employees do, right? They're afraid to talk to their boss about what is actually expected of them.
Correct.
Because they don't want the answer, or they think the answer is going to be what it is.
Correct.
That's usually what it is. They don't want the answer.
Correct. I think so.
That's what I think. Talking to other friends of mine and business owners,
they're asking to be critiqued, you know, and you know you're going to have one usually once a year, maybe twice a year, but now you're going on your own and asking for the critique, which is a very smart career move in most instances.
The smartest career move a person can make.
I can imagine most, out of fear, don't do that.
Yeah, I think about that because I never really thought about it. Like, if someone came into my office and asked, like, that would be awesome. Like, I'm not saying like my people are great. Like, I'm not saying anything bad, but just thinking, like, just in general, like as a boss, if I'm a boss of people and someone comes to my office and just, I want to know what you expect of me and how I can not meet those expectations. Like, to me, that would be a power move on their part in my mind. It's
power
like
move. It's
like, wow, okay. Like, one, that's showing me you have the stones to ask the question. 2, you're not afraid of the answer. And 3, you're willing to do whatever it takes. Like, those 3 things right there, would show me you're in it. Like, you get it. Not saying, and that happens over time in different ways, different people. But I think that's a lot of employees, like, in the general sense, a lot of employees' fear is asking that question because of what will be expected. What if I don't want to do all that? What if I now know what's expected? I don't want to do that.
I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I think that is part of it. Because that is.
So ignorance is bliss to them.
A lot of time. I think in a lot of professions and in a lot of companies, ignorance is bliss. I think in corporate America, definitely. I think people love to fly under the radar in corporate America. If you're not going to tell me what's expected, I'm going to do what I think is expected. And then I have the backup plan that if I get reprimanded, you never told me. But that's really part of the thought
Yeah.
process.
But all that gymnastics, all that mental gymnastics takes way more effort to deal with mentally than just asking the question and dealing with the consequences and potentially setting a new path for yourself.
Yeah, like kick the door in and say, what is expected of me? And how can I show you I will fucking crush it? Like, ask that question, and boom, your path is laid out.
And I would probably suggest to you, if you do that and they don't give you the answers you want, or they're unable, or your boss is unable, or their boss is unable, then you probably need to make a mental note that you might not be at the right organization.
That, or you're engaged in an actual conversation now about expectations. So if someone asks the question, if I come to you and I say, what's expected of me, Eric? And I want to know what I have to do to get to the next level. And you tell me all that shit. I'm like, fuck that. I'm still in conversation. You'll say, okay, well, here, Eric, I think I have a problem with that. And here's why. Now I get to explain to you why I either think that expectation is unreasonable. Why I'm not willing to do it. Or can we agree upon something in the middle, or a different expectation? I'm at least now in an open dialogue with the person to understand how we can navigate this situation. I may not be in the right, it may not be that I'm in the wrong company. I just may be being looked at in the wrong light at this moment in my career. And I'm in an open dialogue now where I can shift the perspective a little bit.
Involved probably in a physical conversation.
Yes. Physical, yes. Like, not over fucking Zoom. Like, like,
so for a moment, I just thought back to this particular job I had. I'll say it. It was a company called Roadway Package Service, RPS, 1987. My first real gig, right? As an 18, 19-year-old. This was before email, and we had a network of terminals that were trying to deliver these packages on time. And we would communicate through our computer system with these terminals on something called a pulse system, where I would be able to write a little paragraph and magically hit enter, and boom, it would send right to this terminal in 1987, well before email, whatever. But I remember we had no inter-office email. There was no if you had to speak to your supervisor, you would walk your ass up and bang on the door and say, can I set up a time to come see you? Now it's not a good time. Or you call them. But everything was done really physical. This was before the age of actually having the safety of reaching out behind an email or a text message or anything else. It really required you to learn about your organizational structure, to learn about job expectations, really physically in the raw, there with the other person. That's how it worked.
I remember when I worked at that pipe company, I remember it was what, in the 90s. And it was a very like antiquated company. And I remember there was one building, and like the building where all the executives sat, and they would send inter-office mail, which was like, they'd put it in this envelope with the rope tied up and then write who it was going to. And it was just, and you'd see like they would reuse the same envelopes. You'd see, Joe Smith, yesterday, it was just like, I'm like, what is that? It's like how people sent messages because we didn't have Slack or instant messenger or text messaging. You literally type something out, wrote it on a piece of paper, stuck it in an envelope, tied the envelope shut, wrote on there who it was going to, and then someone would come physically pick that up and deliver it to the other building.
They call them the mail boy.
Yes. That's exactly what it was.
The mail room.
And that's like, think about how different it is now. Like, now I can just Slack somebody. Hey, can we chat for a second? Instantaneously.
The job before that, literally right out of high school, I was working at a fencing yard. Sears used to sell fencing, home fencing, and installers. So we would pull these orders and get them ready for trucks to come and pick them up out in this yard. And we'd write this order up, and then we would have this. There was a pulley system between the trailer where the office was on the other side of the yard, and the area we were doing the pulling from. And we would write up the paperwork. Put it in a tube, attached to the pulley system, and then we would go like this, and the pulley would send the tube across the yard because I guess they determined that it was faster to do that than walk back. And
that makes sense. It's efficiencies. Right? Yeah, I get it.
That's how we got our work orders. And asked any questions of the office people because they were above us, But it was just so we've come so far, but yet we we've come so far on the communications front
Mhm.
with them, with jobs and employers and so forth, but we've become more closed and more fearful of communication, it seems like. You know?
Are we fearful of communication, or are we fearful of what's going to be communicated?
Well, I think you're right. We're ultimately, I'll take it one step further. We're ultimately afraid of the results of what we communicate.
Absolutely.
In turn, that's why we don't communicate.
Yeah.
We don't go through the process of it.
Yeah.
In a physical way.
It's
We
I
hide
always say,
behind the technology.
yeah, and I think like from like a corporate America or employer-employee perspective, I think a lot of it, because I've watched it happen with other companies where people don't have communication, they don't have discussions, and then they just leave. And here's why I think it happens is they don't have the discussions because then they're not accountable when they leave. Like, if they have a discussion and know what's expected and they don't meet expectations, they're accountable for not meeting them. If they don't have the discussion and feel something coming on but leave, I wasn't accountable. It's not my fault.
It's an out.
It's an out. It's an out.
It's a pathetic out.
Yeah. I mean, it's an out. Like, I think, and again, it comes down to what do you want? Like, if you want a job that it's a job, totally cool. Like 9 to 5, make good money, like great. But if you want to excel in a career or profession or a job and climb the ranks in that profession, career, or job, it's going to take a lot of hard conversations, a lot of them, not just one, many, in self-examination, self-assessment, self-reflection, in the constant ability to navigate and pivot and make adjustments to the way you operate to get to that next level and what's required of that next level. It's just hard to do.
Big picture question.
Yeah. I'm a big picture thing.
Are humans industrious by nature?
Define industrious. I'm going to ask that question.
I knew that was coming, but speaking in the most broad standpoint, is it in us to want to be industrious, for us to want to do things, to use cognitive abilities to be efficient and to make things better, make more of something, be more efficient, whatever that particular niche is that part of the human condition? Or subsequently, do you think our inclination is to find the path of least resistance, the shortest point between 2 points? Is that more our inclination, and we have to work to be not that?
I think here's how I look at it. I think human beings by nature are industrious. Like, think about what we've survived over time. Just throughout the centuries, like, we've been industrious as human beings, right? The Industrial Revolution, like, we're constantly changing the way we live to keep up with the times. So I think by nature, we're industrious. By environment, we seek comfort. And it's a constant battle between our industrious nature and the comfort the environment provides.
Okay.
That's how I see it. Like, because it's you have to, like, everybody's going to, if there's a comfortable environment, everybody's going to seek that unless you do the work to force yourself to be industrious and to get uncomfortable. Because being industrious, in my opinion, is being uncomfortable, because you're creating or you're problem solving, which are not easy things to do, right? They're uncomfortable. On the flip side, if you have an environment that leads to comfort, most people, unless they're consciously, like you said, pushing the other way, they're just going to fall into that comfort. That's human nature, because we've been a survival species for so long, and now we have the ability to just fall into comfort. If comfort's there, we're just going to fall into it.
Yeah, I think the time after the pandemic certainly kind of proved that out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, think about how many people didn't want to go back to work. Like, didn't want to go back to a job where they had been going for 20 years. And now all of a sudden, because we had to stay home for a few months, I don't want to go back there. That's uncomfortable. You did it for 20 fucking years. Like, that's what blew me away the most. Like, how quick people flipped.
Right.
They forgot, like, going to a job is the norm, was the norm, and should always be the norm. We had a moment in time where we all lost our collective minds a little bit. It was real, but we also lost our collective minds. And then people are like, oh, I don't want to go back. Why should we go back to the office? Like, that's unheard of. Like, that's just unreasonable. That's unsafe. Unsafe? Like, you did this your entire fucking life. And now all of a sudden, like, it's these, how dare these employers force us to go back to the office? How about that's where the fucking job is? The job is at this address.
Yeah, that's something. Huh?
Yeah,
Show up
that's a thing. If you want the job. If not, okay, you quit.
That's a thing.
Like, but people are like losing their minds. Like, how can these employers do this? Like, I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's just crazy. Like, we have lost our minds still.
Yeah, because on March 16th, everything was, pretty normal.
Everybody was in the office.
Yeah, it was like, just, this is what it's been like all these years. And all of a sudden, the next day, it changes on a dime. And the expectation is once we get past the bulk of the pandemic, whatever that means, things start to slowly get back to normal.
Yeah.
The rank and file didn't want it to be normal anymore.
Right.
Basically.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would agree. And I always say, like, I don't want to categorize this, but the people that are always fighting those battles against the employers, like, oh, like, you can't do this. How can you do this? I always say your view will change when your view changes. Like, when you're sitting in the other side of the desk, your view will change.
But they'll never get there with that type of work ethic. You know
what I mean?
And that's catch-22.
Right. Like, it's exactly right. It's they have to understand, like, if you want to get to the other side of the desk,
right,
it takes a different level of thinking.
Okay, so let's talk about what you just said, though, because that's a little glimpse of some of the quote unquote entitlement that came out of a lot of folks' mouth about their existing jobs and the idea that they deserved these jobs, which when I started hearing that, like in 21, 22, I started hearing things like that. I maybe it was the pure capitalist in me, which, that isn't always the best either. But I was like, you think that you're entitled to have this position within this private firm,
right?
You're entitled to this role that you have.
Yeah.
And you want certain benefits and you have certain demands within this role. That is not a philosophy that I would think would serve you well in the workforce long term.
No, not. I mean, my name's on the wall and I'm not entitled to it. Like, I worked for it. It can be ripped away from me tomorrow. And I keep that at the forefront of my mind every single
Dues must
day.
be paid daily.
There's nothing I'm entitled to. I can walk in the next day and everything could be gone.
Right.
And that's what lights the fire under my ass every single day, because I don't believe I'm entitled to shit. I believe I've worked my ass off to get here, and I'll continue to work my ass off. And I may not be the smartest guy, but I will outwork anybody.
Yeah.
Because I believe that I'm not entitled to anything, no matter where I get in life. I'm not entitled to it. I earned it, and it can be taken away. So I have to pay the dues, like you just said, every single day. Not one day where I can't. Because if I slip one day, that one day can turn to 2. That 2 can turn to 10, and that 10 can turn to bye-bye.
100%.
Yeah, that's the scary part. There's no entitlement in this world. You don't get things because you exist.
We used to somewhat believe that, but that 2020 changed a lot.
I mean,
I'm not saying for the better. I'm just saying that entitlement idea, I'll just say it's an idea, seemed to proliferate a lot when it came to the workforce after 2020. And maybe it's being corrected now. Maybe
I think I hear stories of people, clients tell me things that happens in their workspace or in their workforce. I'm like, that is just crazy. Like, there are, again, I think it comes down to people that have that entitlement mentality, think they can do or say whatever they want because there's no repercussions. It's like, that's not how the world works.
There's always repercussions.
Not everybody gets a trophy. Let's
Mhm.
start there. Like,
Mhm.
and if you haven't paid your dues, you don't make the rules.
Mhm.
Society doesn't make the rules.
Society used to understand that.
I don't think they do. I think there's a big part of society that doesn't understand that anymore.
Not right now.
It's like, well,
No.
you can't do that. You can't do this. I'll do whatever I want to do.
Uh-huh.
I paid my dues. As long as I'm not doing anything that's illegal or the law says I can't do, I'll do whatever the fuck I want because I paid the dues.
Mhm.
When you pay the dues, then you have the right to say what people can and can't do.
Mhm.
But if you haven't paid the dues yet, understand the place.
Yeah, and it's the broadest form of situational awareness or lack thereof that you could think of. Not
Yeah.
understanding the structure of your organization. If you're going to join a company,
Mhm.
even if you're employee 1 out of 70,000, it would behoove you to spend a little of your own time
Yeah.
to learn about the organization, the structure,
Yes.
how things work. I mean, that's just, to me, that's just common knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, I have conversations with people about this every week to clients and friends of mine that have these issues. It's just, and it is there is that big level of entitlement that people think because they're in an organization. Because here's what I see. I think there are these people that have this entitlement mentality think society will protect them. Because in society, like we can say we can't be offended. We can't, like there's this like group think that they think will protect them.
Mhm.
What they fail to realize is that's great in theory, but when it comes down to an organization, if you are the one and only in that organization that thinks or acts a certain way, the group's not coming to save you.
Mhm.
Sorry. Like that's just not how it works.
Mhm.
And you may feel safe and warm in your environment with your people and in your social media feed, but know your environment.
Mhm.
Know your environment. And
Mhm.
there's not the world, the outside world doesn't always come into organizations to save them. Some organizations have just built the fortitude to say, we don't give a fuck about what the outside world is.
I think more and more are going to
I
revert
think
back to that.
A lot. I'm seeing that a shit ton. That's why I'm saying it, because I'm seeing it happen.
What's survival? I
'Cause
mean,
companies are just like, fuck this. We're over it.
Well,
Like, get in line or get out.
it's not natural in the order of things when it comes to building an organization for things to get flipped up and down where
Right.
your workers are telling management how things are going to be.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
Operations don't work
Yes.
that way.
Yeah, this does not work that
any
way.
capacity.
No,
Even if they pretend to tolerate it for a period of time, it's not going to last.
no. And if you are an employee in an organization that thinks you can do that, you have no awareness of how it really works.
And we've somehow recently lost some of our awareness.
Mhm.
We've actually lost it. I don't know. I know why it happened. Now you can see if you follow the events of what happened in the world, but it is really breathtaking to see how some just don't grasp reality.
No, they don't. They don't.
And at one point in time, they kind of did,
Mhm.
but they just don't anymore.
Yeah,
Maybe their politicians are telling them things, or their friends down the street are telling them things. I don't know where they're getting the information from.
I think it's like I said, there's a lot of groupthink. That's what I think. I think a lot of people, because if you think about just all the shit out there that people talk about, it really only started about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason it's still around is because the groupthink, and because these big companies have catered to it. What people aren't realizing is if they're looking closely, these big companies are now saying, no, doesn't matter to us anymore. It didn't give us the upside we thought it would, and we're losing the paying customer base.
A couple bad quarters.
Correct. A couple bad quarters can change your opinion on people's feelings very quickly.
It can change
when your shareholders say, hey, we lost money.
Culture.
Yep.
It can change philosophy.
And here's the thing, people understand, like, we live in a capitalistic society.
Mm-hmm.
We do not live in a socialist society where people's feelings matter. We are in a capitalist society. And if people don't like that, no one's saying you have to stay here. You can go, like all those celebrities, like, I'm going to leave if Trump wins. No one left because they know a capitalist society is the best society to live in.
1000%.
But they also want to talk about feelings, and it's like that. They
Well,
don't
want
jive.
it all.
Yeah, you can't have it all.
You can't, and that's the, and maybe that's the overall lesson in the end for children to teach coming up is like, it's be nice to have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah,
but in reality, it's not the way the world works. There's
No.
always going to be compromise. There's always going to be, decisions to make, what directions they take, why, and you're going to go left or right. In some of these folks' world, that they're going to split the car in half and go both directions. That's not how the world works.
Correct. Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Take ownership of your circumstances and
Yeah.
make a decision, and by God, see it through.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I think people get caught up. They don't make the decision, so they
I shouldn't have to.
Exactly, or they have one foot in and one foot out, and they can't decide. It's like, make the decision. There will be a sacrifice now or a sacrifice later, but in life, you will be forced to make sacrifices at some point in time. I've made a shit ton over my career. Choices I've made, like I've missed things, I've done certain things, I haven't been, at everything. Those are sacrifices I made. But had I not made those sacrifices, I would not be where I am. So I knew I had to sacrifice then to get where I am now. If I didn't sacrifice them, then I'd be sacrificing now by being 10 steps behind where I am.
Absolutely.
And that's how people need to look at life. There's always going to be sacrifice. You can't have it all. It's impossible. And if anybody tells you otherwise, they're lying.
I also think a part of this indecision or this ability or the lack thereof of making decisions does play into that whole fear thing, the fear of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And I do believe society years prior, decades prior, just required you to make these big decisions as part of existing.
Yeah, exactly.
And we got good at it,
Yeah.
We screwed up sometimes.
Yeah.
And we live with bad decisions. We correct our way and we figure it out.
Yeah.
But society's given mechanisms now of avoidance in many instances, and able to survive in continual avoidance of making decisions. And I think it's changing.
Yeah.
But that has not served us well.
No,
I don't believe.
No. And remember, avoidance is a decision. It's not indecision. You've made a decision not to make a decision. So you've actually made a decision. And this is what people always say, like, I can't make a decision. I don't want to decide things. I don't like the uncertainty. Well, that in and of itself is a decision.
But isn't making no decision the ultimate uncertainty?
Yeah,
To me,
it is.
I mean,
That's yes, it flies in the face of logic in my mind.
Yes.
Because if you don't make a decision, you're allowing the world to happen. And whatever, you don't know what's going to happen. If you make a decision, you at least know the path you have chosen to take. And you can navigate that a little bit better. Maybe right or wrong. And I also say, the more decisions you make, the better you get at making them.
Absolutely. It's a muscle. It's a skill set.
1,000%. But people don't want to do it because of the uncertainty.
It's called confidence. It's called, there's so many, the avoidance thing. It's funny that society runs the way it does at times with the ability for people to avoid decision making. It's really something.
Society has a lot of bumper rails and helmets right now. Like, what they give people are very protected. Society has created there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of bumper rails and bike helmets.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, if you think about it, like, I just taking it literally. I didn't wear a bike helmet when I was a kid. Did you?
No.
I fell 1,000 times. Maybe that's why I am the way I am. Maybe I bumped my head a few many times. I don't know.
Epic sissy bars,
Right.
man. I had crazy BMX bikes. We were nuts.
We would go down major roads, like downhill,
As
and
fast as
hope to avoid a car. Like, definitely avoid a car. Like, not even think. There was not a sense. Now it's our fault for creating this fear in our kids. Like, have to wear a helmet. Like, I made my daughters wear helmets. But like, I'm thinking, like, we used to create ramps with just pieces of wood we would find and jump over shit on our bike. No pads, no helmets.
To jump
We
over
all
people.
survived.
We'd lay them down on the road. We'd jump over people.
Yeah. So we used to sled ride. It was called Dead Man's Curve. This hill we went down. It was literally called Dead Man's Curve because there was a tree in the middle of the hill, and if you didn't turn, you hit the tree. So you literally had to be paying attention, and you were going down in the middle of the woods so fast, and if you didn't make that turn, you'd smack the tree and probably break your entire body.
Yeah, but I think we were more aware of our surroundings then, less distractions in our lives.
Yes.
So that particular sled ride you were on was the most important thing in your life at that moment.
That's all I was focused on was I'm not hitting this fucking tree.
You don't have your Apple Watch.
No.
Or worrying about your phone catching any like snow or ice in the back pocket.
Nope.
I mean,
so
we were really situationally aware of everything.
We were undistracted.
Yes, we
were
undistracted. Which invariably might have made us
stupid.
Situationally safer at times.
Sure, but also,
you can make that argument.
Also, situationally overconfident.
Sure,
because I mean, I'm thinking about like times we would ride our bike down a hill with side streets the cars come out of. Let's just fucking take the chance and see what happens. Like none of us ever got hit with cars, but thinking back, it's like that was the stupidest.
Certainly,
like 12 years old, 13 years old, barreling down a hill on a bike.
Of course.
If I hit my front brakes too hard, I'm flipping over that.
And if you saw your daughter doing that now, wouldn't you be horrified?
Oh my God, I would. There's no way. I would go grab her and protect her, both of them. Like, but like our parents, like we just said, we'll be back before it gets dark. Just left the house.
I never forget this. I saw my son riding his 10-speed, I think, for the first time, decade ago, whatever, coming down this street in the plan he lived in. I mean, I drove past and he was flying. I was horrified.
Yeah.
I chased him with my car. I told him to slow down. Meanwhile, he saw nothing wrong with what he was doing.
Yeah.
I was not letting him live in a fraction of the danger that I lived. Right.
Yes.
We had just really mentally gone into this cocoon of some kind.
We did, man. I mean,
you haven't lived until you jumped in the back of a Ford F-150 pickup truck with 3 other guys and just flew down 79 to the wave pool.
Listen, man. Yeah,
70 miles an hour, no seatbelts, banging around in a Ford F-150. And the car, I'm sure the police saw us doing it, never pulled us over.
No. I can just remember, like, as a kid, like going, like, we would just leave in the morning and not, like, our parents had no idea how to find us. We'll be back before dark. And I remember, like, one time we rode our bikes, like, on this bike trail, like 50 miles to Ohio, went to this little, like, restaurant, ate sandwiches, and came back. It's like, if my daughters did that now, they'd be grounded for a year. I'm like, you rode 50 miles on a bike to Ohio. Didn't tell me. I had no idea how to, like, our parents just knew we'd come back. Like, we had survival skills.
I think most kids today don't have those survival skills. They might not attempt some of the shit we did either because we conditioned them
we definitely
with helmets and bumper lanes and everything else. But that's a whole nother podcast.
Man.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
It was a good one, man.
We'll do it again next week.
We will.
All right, partner.
See you.
We're out.